So what happens when you look up slavery on Google in America? This is what you see. You know, this is just all they show. Now that I got that out the way, we're gonna watch this video that I keep seeing for some reason. Let's just get into it because you know how I feel about intros.
And now for a brief history of slavery. Here's the first thing you need to know. Slavery was not invented by white people. It did not start in 1619 when the first slaves came to Jamestown. It existed before then. It did not start in 1492 when Columbus discovered the New World. In fact, when the intrepid explorer landed in the Bahamas, the native Taino tribe hoped that he would help them defeat their aggressive neighbors, the Caribs. The Caribs enslaved the Taino and, on occasion, served them for dinner. Slavery existed in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The word slave actually comes from the Slavs of Eastern Europe. Millions of them, all white by the way, were captured and enslaved by Muslims in the 9th century and later by the Ottoman Turks.
You know I like to do my research. The word for slave in medieval Latin is Slavus, which is the etymology of Slavic. The reason why this term was chosen for what we now call the Slavic people is that this region of Europe was once the source of slaves for people in other parts of Europe. They were taken as slaves by the Muslims of Spain during the 9th century AD. Okay. Oh, and I forgot to introduce y'all to this woman. Let me just show y'all. Here's a little bit of the controversial things that Candace Owens has said. I don't really know much about the research of her, but this is what I found so far.
You hate Americans with black skin color?
Absolutely not. I actually love Americans with black skin color so much that I'm willing to fall on the sword 1,000 times for them to wake up.
My experience being black in America, I don't know any black people that are fearful to walk down the street because they think a Klansman's going to come get them, right? But I can list you tons of black people that grow up in poverty, that grow up in the hood, that grow up around gang culture, that are fearful. When you examine black on black crime rates, when I was just talking about illiteracy rates, I said that I could list 100 things the black community is suffering from today before I got to white supremacy, and yet the focus and the emphasis in the school system has been to brainwash us to believe that white people want to kill us around every single corner, and I think that that's a harmful ideology because it doesn't allow us to actually focus on the things that we're suffering from.
I'm just scrolling on TikTok, you know, just trying to find some more information about her. She also made a documentary exposing Black Lives Matter. Now, me personally, I already knew about this stuff, and I already knew about the Black Lives Matter situation because of Young Pharaoh, and he was exposing so much of it. Let's just continue on the history lesson that we're going to get today.
Slavery existed when the Roman Empire controlled the Mediterranean and most of Europe from the 1st through the 5th centuries. Slavery existed when Alexander the Great conquered Persia in the 4th century BC. It was so common that Aristotle simply considered it natural. The slave-master model was just how the world operated in the great philosopher's day. Slavery existed during the time of the ancient Egyptians 5,000 years ago. As far back as we can go in human history, we find slavery. As renowned historian John Steele Gordon notes from time immemorial, slaves were a major item of commerce. As much as 1/3 of the population of the ancient world was enslaved. Here's the second thing you need to know. White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery. In
You know, I'm always open to learning. I'm not going to constrict myself because the programs that we have been put into by school. So let's just continue.
1833, Britain was the first country in the history of the world to pass a Slavery Abolition Act. They were quickly followed by France, who in 1848 abolished slavery in her many colonies. Then, of course, came the 13th Amendment in the United States Constitution. After centuries of human slavery, white men led the world in putting an end to the abhorrent practice. That includes the 300,000 Union soldiers, overwhelmingly white, who died during the Civil War. Now, am I saying that this makes white people better than anyone else? Of course not. My purpose here is to simply tell the truth, and the truth is that human history is complicated. No one, regardless of skin color, stands guiltless. Yet today we are never told to consider the murderous Persian Empire or the cannibalism of indigenous tribes of North and South America or the heinous actions under the imperialistic Muslim, Chinese, Mongol, or Japanese empires, to name just a few. Instead, we're told that slavery is a white phenomenon. And like all persistent lies, this lie spawns a bunch of other lies.
I was scrolling on TikTok one day and I remember seeing a video basically talking about this thing called the Nanking Massacre. And I'm like, what is that? And they were saying it was something that happened over in Asia. The massacre was so like horrible and terrible. It has a safe search filter on. What had happened was the Japanese people literally like massacred, unalived so many women, babies, men, and it was like terrible. 20,000 women were assaulted by the Japanese soldier. When I say brutally, put it in all caps because they were brutally unalived afterwards. There were 10-year-old women who were over 70-year-old, pregnant women, nuns, it was just a terrible, horrible massacre. Me putting this information in this video is not about who had it worse, who had the most worst atrocities ever happen to their race. For the last 200 years, we have been recycling the same ideologies, the same thought patterns, the same hatred. Like even right now, it's technically Black History Month. And so much of my feed and my timeline is filled with horrible stories that have been, done to my ancestors. And it's just like, this is why I did a whole little series of, women in slavery who actually defended themselves. And when you go on Google and you look it up and you look up slavery, it's just associated with white people and Black people. Expand your mind, learn more.
On social media, I come across extraordinary depictions about how Africans lived like pharaohs before Europeans came and laid waste to their paradise. I wish any of this were true, but it's not. It's a fantasy. The truth is that Africans were sold into slavery by other Black Africans, and in many cases, sold for items as trivial as gin and mirrors. Whites didn't go into the interior and round up the natives. They waited on the coast for their Black partners to bring them Black bodies. The stark reality is that our lives had very little value to our ancestors. Here's the third thing you need to know.
I don't know.
If you think slavery is a relic of the past, you're wrong. There are some 700,000 slaves in Africa today, right now. That's the lowest estimate that I could find. Other sources say there are many more. For context, that's almost twice as many slaves as were ever brought to the United States. Child soldiers, human trafficking, forced labor, these are the conditions that currently exist within the same sub-Saharan region where the transatlantic slave trade originated. African bodies are being sold today like they were sold then, and no, they are not being purchased by any country of white men. In fact, slavery, by any traditional definition, is exclusively practiced today within non-white countries. But we hear almost nothing about that. Just like we hear nothing about how slavery was universal until good people in Europe and America ended it 2 centuries ago. Why? Because our so-called leaders, Black and white, wouldn't profit from it. Black victimhood is nothing if not profitable. It elects politicians and funds racial grievance groups. And if Black Americans began to view themselves as partners in the American dream, if we embraced the patriotic spirit that holds all men are created equal, the patriotic spirit that is our real heritage, then the race hustlers would soon be out of business. And who wants that? I'm Candace Owens, author of Blackout, for Prager University.
It's important to know true history, but also not to be ignorant of the things that you were doing and try to hide behind the atrocities and the massacres and the slavery and the pain that the other people have caused, but you're not willing to admit what you have done. It's the same thing that's been happening within the government, the stuff that they have done, the stuff that every other country has done, but it makes other countries, it uses other countries or it uses other places to make themselves look better. And it's just what has been happening continuously over 200 years of this constant recycling of hatred and energy. It's not helping. Expand your mind, expand your perceptions of things. There is nothing that is good and just bad. Everything has duality to it. That's why we are on a planet in a universe that operates off of freedom of choice, free will, energy, people, aliens, everything is more complicated than just everything just being black and white, which is what we are in. We are in the black and the white. That is the only thing we have been taught. And that is what I want y'all to learn from this video, from the black and white we have been living in. Thank you for watching my video. I hope that y'all have a good rest of y'all day. Enjoy your life. Get some meditation in today and relax, okay? I love you. Thank you for watching my video.